I think the consistency of the practice, I think it's one of those things that if you make small changes in your life, they can add up to become something quite significant.
Yeah.
And so for me, taking the time every day to be able to sit, whether that was for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, over time, you really start to get to know yourself better.
Welcome to the Conversation Factory. I'm your host, Daniel Stillman. Each episode, I'll talk to an amazing conversation designer to try and distill insights we can all bring into our work and lives. Human conversation is a material that can be shaped by design, and shifting conversations in everyday meetings, in organizations, and yourself can create real change. And I hope to help you do it better and more authentically. I'd love to have you stay part of the conversation. Head over to theconversationfactory.com to sign up for my newsletter and never miss an episode. That's theconversationfactory.com. I'd also love for you to be part of the show. If there's a challenging transformation you're working through, head over to theconversationfactory.com, click coaching, and sign up for 30 minutes of free coaching that we might use on the show. Head over to theconversationfactory.com, hit coaching, and let me know what conversations you need help redesigning. Enjoy the episode. In this episode, I talk with Stephen Sokoler, the founder and CEO of Journey Meditation, a company dedicated to a world where more people meditate. I wanted to talk to Stephen because the inner conversation we need to foster is often completely forgotten. Instead, we focus on our teams, our organizations, our communities, all of the other critical conversations we've discussed in past episodes. But without going inward, the whole thing falls apart. Meditation is like when an actor goes backstage to freshen their makeup, change costumes, look over the script. In life, we go from role to role without pause. And meditation is a way to step back and let it all chill. I screwed this episode up. I'll be honest. Actually, I've done it before. When you're doing your own field recordings, it's easy to press the record button once, watch it blink, check your levels, and then go into the interview automatically. Oops! You actually need to press the button twice. Then the blinking stops, and the seconds counter goes up. I messed up and lost about 30 minutes of sweet, sweet conversation with Stephen. Noticing it during our interview sent a cold chill through my whole body. I just wasted this man's time terribly. I had two options: say nothing and try to fix it in post, or cop to it and try again. I went for honesty, and since we're friends, Stephen humored me and we started over. I mention this not because I love honesty or vulnerability, although I do, but because you might hear how the conversation with Stephen starts off a little stiff, a little mechanical. We are both pushing energy into the system to try and get the energy of the conversation back to where it was. It's not tremendously noticeable, but you'll hear once we get maybe to the halfway point, things relax. We find a new thread for the conversation instead of trying to pull back towards the old one, and the conversation finds a more natural tone. Meditation is like this too. Being present has a gravity, but we can lose it, drift off. And we have to bring ourselves back in a way that isn't too forced or artificial. In the episode, Stephen and I discover another really interesting point of overlap, a connection between meditation and conversation design that I hadn't really noticed before. Meditation is about coming back to your center. Recently, I was talking to a facilitator friend of mine who described his role as holding the center. Facilitating a great team conversation is about holding that space for real dialogue, holding it open at the center, and keeping people who drift off too far from getting far away from that center. We just bring things back as gently as we can to the thread and keep things going. Enjoy the episode. Stephen is a gentle and passionate soul, and he's building an amazing company based on something he truly loves. I learned a lot from this episode, and I hope you do too. Stephen Sokoler, thank you for making even more time. This is round two.
Take two.
Because I screw this stuff up sometimes. Sometimes the second time is better. You're the CEO of Journey Meditation, and we're in your apartment. We've got a stack of your books. We have a vision board for Journey Meditation, And we have a diagram I drew about the 4 types of conversations I want to talk with you about. And for me, what's interesting about meditation is that it's making space and time for the inner conversation that is by oneself. It's going away from that hubbub and the busyness of all the other conversations. And I'm wondering, we talked about this in round 1, and we're going to talk about it again.
Let's do it.
Is how you came to find meditation and how it kind of changed the way you were living.
Sure. The way I found meditation was actually kind of interesting. I had moved to Sydney, Australia, back about 5-6 years ago. And I moved there to open an office for my company. It was the business that I had been running for, at that time, probably 10 years. And it was the first time that I had lived outside of New York City, with the exception of a brief stint in Madrid while in college. And so first time living outside New York City as an adult, was living on the beach.
Sydney's one of the most beautiful cities.
It's incredible.
In the world.
The people, the food, the
You
lifestyle.
lived on Bondi Beach?
Yeah, on the beach. It was...
On the parade.
Yeah, on Campbell Parade. It was incredible. Anyway, I started to have a lot more space in my life. The pace of life was different. I had all new friends, a very wide variety of friends. I was doing yoga every day. And funny enough, I was in a bookstore in this very fancy shopping mall. And there was a book there that caught my eye called Buddhism for Busy People. And
which is here. Is this
here.
the copy?
That is
Did
the
you
book.
buy this in Sydney?
Yeah, that's the book.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So the story of a British gentleman who found meditation and it changed his life, or found Buddhism. And for me, the book really resonated. I had been on a path of self-development for probably 8 years at that point. But this book really, really spoke to me. And so that's how I found meditation. And then fast forward a couple of years later, end up selling that company and took some time to think about what I wanted to do, which obviously we spoke about, but we could speak about again. And obviously, the story goes, I started a company to try to help people live happier, healthier, less stressed lives through meditation.
Did you learn to meditate from this book? The first chapter is how to meditate, and it talks about breath counting and 9-cycle breath meditation. Did you ingest this book, and that was your first meditation experience?
It's interesting. I don't remember the first time I meditated, similar to I don't remember the first time I exercised. But when I read that book, that was when I started meditating. That was when I started actually practicing. So could I have meditated before that?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
But that was when it became a part of my life. And then the Jack Kornfield book, Meditation for Beginners, was really one that really resonated with me, and, doing some reading online and all that good stuff. But this was the book that really got me started.
This is a very well-loved book. This is a huge dog-eared page. Is there something on this page that's important for us to know about?
Well, let's take a look.
It's about karma and getting what you want.
I feel like I should make up a story. Well, it says here I was 34 years old and had been writing since I was 18. I was probably 34 when I read this book. Interesting. I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest.
Just handed the book back to me. So this was your introduction to meditation, but that wasn't enough for you. You got pulled further into it, and it started to change how you were living, right? Which doesn't happen to everybody. Why do you think it happened to you?
I think the consistency of the practice. I think it's one of those things that if you make small changes in your life, they can add up to become something quite significant.
Yeah.
And so for me, taking the time every day to be able to sit, whether that was for 20 minutes or 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, over time, you really start to get to know yourself better. Your mind starts to quiet down and calm down a little bit. You start to hear different things, in terms of your instinct and your gut. And for me, it was just a very, very helpful practice. I mean, so much so that when I was deciding what to do with the rest of my life after the 12 years at Altramanners, my former company, I said, this is something I'm so passionate about. I want to share it with the world.
So you started this company, and we were talking in the park, literally, this was 2 years ago, right when you were starting this. You originally designed this company to bring meditation to the workplace. And you said now there's a bigger vision. But I'm curious about talking a little bit about how meditation affects a company culture, like what people get when they bring Journey meditation into the workplace, and how you guys structure it right now.
Sure. Yeah, great question. Let me go back for a second. The original idea was not to go into corporations. The original idea was, how do we share meditation with more people in a way that meets them where they are? in a way that's simple, approachable, accessible, secular. And my belief is if we're able to do that, it'll really transform people's lives.
Yeah.
And
because it did that for you.
Because it did that for me.
Yeah.
And what I did was I put together a team of experts in modern science and ancient wisdom. The idea being to leverage the practices that human beings have been doing for thousands of years and combine it with everything we now know about how the brain and body work. And once we had that very simple yet powerful practice, we took it to corporate America. And we took it to corporate America because that's the world that I had lived in for the previous decade and a half. It's an audience that we knew well. And of course, there's obviously a need for it in the corporate environment.
Yes.
So to fast forward to today, over the past 2 years, we've had the opportunity to work with some of the best companies in the world. Facebook, Disney, Nike, Warby Parker, Time Warner, Dow Jones, Morgan Stanley, etc. And the way it works is we'll go in and teach very small, very bite-sized amounts of meditation along with some particular life lesson. So each class is 30 minutes, the same time, same place every week. Each week has a different theme. And what we see is people come back each and every week. People start practicing on their own. People start coming in and sharing their experience. So it's been really rewarding, by far the most rewarding work I've ever done. And to answer your question, we talk to companies about the benefits both on the individual level and on the collective level. And on the collective level, we talk about things like productivity and retention and employee health and how that benefits the organization. And so we try to share everything through the lens of not just this is a nice to have, not just this is something you should do because it's a good thing to do, but there's real dollars and cents around why you should bring this into your organization.
So one of the things that I've started to realize about my own creativity is that you can't squeeze it all out, right? It's almost like a tree. If you take everything away from it, if you cut down all the branches, there's nothing left. You have to leave something behind and let something grow back. And I feel like for me, meditation is that chance to let things lie fallow a little bit. It seems like with business culture, getting that sound in there, that it's okay to step away from your desk and have a moment of absence, of emptiness, of letting everything go. That seems like a big shift for business culture.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the challenges in the lives many of us are leading today is we're constantly connected. We have these smartphones with us all the time. It's the first thing we look at when we wake up. It's the last thing we look at when we go to sleep. We feel anxious when we don't have it on us. And most of the time, we're looking at work, a work email over the weekend, when we're on vacation, here, there. And so we don't really have that space to be able to be creative or be relaxed or refreshed. You know, there's so many studies around burnout in the workplace and how when people are able to, whether it's take a proper vacation or take 10 minutes a day to meditate, they actually perform better. And so I think that meditation for people in general is incredibly important. And as a business owner, for me to get the most out of my team, they need to take care of themselves. And so creating an environment that supports that is extremely important.
So I'm curious, if meditation is what you live and breathe.
Is that a pun?
Well, no, it's not. Maybe it is. Is there a risk, or have you found that if meditation is what you use to take a step away from everything, but meditation is also what you're doing all the time, do you take a break from meditation? Like, do you need to step away from it because it's your whole context?
One of the things that I was very concerned about before I started Journey Meditation was, will I get sick of meditation?
Yeah.
Like I use the analogy baseball. Like I'm a big baseball fan. I love the Mets, but if I was going to Citi Field every day, it would probably wear on me a little bit.
Lose some magic.
Yeah. And what I found was it was actually...
That was a pun.
That was a pun. Yes, that's right. What I found was it's actually been the opposite. And I think the reason being I'm able to... The people that I spend time with are people who really teach me. You know, when you and I have conversations, I learn. When I go and sit with my meditation teacher, I learn. When I sit with our meditation teachers, I learn. When I go to quote unquote social events, like tonight, I'm going to a meditation event led by my buddy Light Watkins. You know, I'll go there and I'll learn. And so it's one of these things where there's so much nourishment and progress. It just feels great. So 2 years in, have not felt that way at all, and actually just continue to learn and grow. And I think it's really supported me quite a bit in my both professional and personal growth.
So there's a couple of things that I'd like to unpack, because one is you talked about the fact that you still have your own meditation teacher, right? So thinking about that dialogue that you have with that meditation teacher. And then the other conversation you talked about is you and your team, right? How you bring meditation into your own team, how you structure your company in a way that you feel is most conducive to like the best way of working. I'd love for you to talk about those two things, like you and your meditation teacher, and then also like you and your team. Those two dialogues would be really cool to dig into.
Sure. So I'm super fortunate. My meditation teacher is Sharon Salzberg, who's one of the people who helped bring meditation to the West, and also one of the world's experts on metta, or loving kindness practice. And for me, part of the appeal in sitting with Sharon, besides the fact that she's just such an amazing human being, I mean, just spending time with her is just such a beautiful experience. I wanted to bring more feeling into my life, more love into my life. And by that, I mean, I spend a lot of time in my head, whether that's thinking about the business or thinking about life or, all the other things that go on. And I said, I want to feel more. I want to be in my body more. And so Sharon has been incredibly helpful with that in my personal practice. And then we have a great time. We just sit and talk about meditation. She's been teaching for 40 years. So going back and what was it like 40 years ago? How did you get started when you were 18 and first traveled to India? And, hearing those stories is incredible. So I work with Sharon. I also have another person who's a coach. I call him a men's coach because we met at a men's retreat. He just happens to be a man. But I have another coach that I see, and we work on similar things, but from a different perspective. So for me, that self-development is something that's incredibly important. Incredibly important for me as a human being, for me as, to be the best version of me I can be, to be the best son to my mom, to be the best brother to my brother, to be the best friend, to be the best, coach at my company, etc. And on the team side, we spend a lot of time and energy on making this an incredible place to work. And I want to speak to that for a second, because that's not, we have the best snacks and we have a foosball table and we have an open bar. It's not about that.
I mean, there's a bar over there.
There is a bar, but it's not open.
Hey, this is Daniel. We're about the halfway point, so this is a great time for you to get up, stretch your legs, get some popcorn, fill up your soda. If you're in the car, stay focused. If you have your hands free, this is also a great moment to head over to theconversationfactory.com to sign up for the newsletter. I send out more detailed write-ups, insights, and tools from these conversations, and I'd love to share them with you. So head over to theconversationfactory.com and stay in the loop.
We spend a lot of time creating an environment where people can feel like they can show up as themselves. So we talk about one life. So it's not, I'm this really fun, zany person on the weekend, but then I have to put on this mask and come to work as someone else because at my company, I can't be myself.
Yeah.
So for us, it's really important for people to be able to show up as themselves and share themselves. And I say that because, how often do you say, oh, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Meanwhile, the person's not good. They're struggling with something. So we create a space where people have the ability to share if they choose to. And that's really important. And that takes time and that takes energy. And so we do certain things like we sit every Monday for 15 minutes together. We often take walks just around the neighborhood, kind of unstructured, nothing formal.
Yes.
But whether that's on the High Line or by the water. And we really try to support each other in terms of becoming the best versions of ourselves. So we have these commitment statements where you say, I'm committing to being, for me personally, like a compassionate leader. I don't want to lead solely with my head. I want to lead with my heart also. Yeah. And so by putting that out there, it raises the bar for me and it gives other people the context to see, What is it that Stephen wants? Who is he aspiring to be? And let's help him get there, both personally and professionally. So there's things like that.
There's something really powerful about putting out there what you're looking at, what you're looking for, right? Sort of, it holds you accountable, but it also means that people can help you because they know what you're going for. I always tell people that if they're trying to start something or build something or change something, the more open you are with it, the more feedback you can get rather than just trying to keep it all in.
I agree.
So I had a question for you about why meditation in a group is different than meditation by yourself. Because it is.
It is.
My mother calls it the group field. I don't know what, but it's there.
I'm really excited to see some science that starts supporting this. So when we host our classes, whether in corporations or in public, I don't know if you know this, we now host public classes also. Yeah, so 3 times a week in New York, and we're soon going to be expanding to other cities, we host community classes. And so we're doing that currently in partnership with WeWork and Sweetgreen. WeWork provides the space.
Yeah.
Journey Meditation, obviously, the meditation. Sweetgreen, the salad. You get
nice.
that. And yeah, it's a beautiful experience. And we do those for free. People come, they sit, they connect. Our whole thing is to build this really supportive, inclusive community that helps people to grow and connect with each other. And so this was a way of doing that. So back to your question about the group meditation, people will often report that it's just much more powerful. And I've experienced it myself, and I don't know why that is. And so I've reached out to several of our advisors. Journey has a number of advisors on the science side to see if we can get some studies that share that. I had mentioned earlier, I think in take 1, that we had a clinical study at New York University, which I can share the results of, and that was meditation for individuals. I'm really excited to see some science around how does meditation affect some of those same things when done in a group, because it is, as you said, or as your mom said, it's powerful.
So I want to talk about that study a little bit, because Journey Meditation is designed in a certain way. And most people who don't know about meditation, and I think even some people who do know about meditation, aren't aware of all the different flavors there are, right? Vipassana, which is silent meditation for a week. And then I think they recommend an hour twice a day, which is a lot. I was raised with a flavor of transcendental meditation, which is half an hour twice a day. Journey meditation, you were saying, has an effective dose of, 15 minutes once a day,
Correct.
Right? That the science says that we can do it with less.
Correct.
And the science was, cortisol and stress hormones. Can you review that?
Sure. Yeah. So the study that we did, it was led by a neuroscientist named Dr. Wendy Suzuki at New York University. And the study was called The Effects of Journey Meditation on Cortisol, Stress Levels, and Executive Functioning. Executive functioning being things like memory and focus. And what the study showed was that just 12 minutes of meditation, in this case it was the Journey practice, 12 minutes of Journey meditation every day for 8 weeks led to significant reductions in anxiety, increases in attention, and improvement in mood. So people were less stressed, they could focus more, and they were happier in just 12 minutes a day, which is less than 1% of your day. So pretty worthwhile investment of your time and energy.
Yeah, that's pretty blockbuster. So other types of meditation, for example, I try to do Julia Cameron's morning pages, right? 3 pages a day. I'm not always consistent with it, but I think that's a meditative practice. Mm-hmm. I keep a gratitude journal. But in terms of pure meditation, what are the other flavors out there? Because there's Headspace and all these things.
There's a lot. I mean, I love the exercise analogy. So the same way you may stay fit by doing CrossFit, someone else does yoga, someone runs, I lift. It's all great. So if you practice TM, someone else does Headspace, someone else does Vipassana, some people do Journey, and some people do sort of flavor of the day. Yeah. That's great. Find something that resonates with you. The thing about Journey is it's very simple. It's very approachable. The practice itself combines 4 ancient techniques in one particular sequence. So there's mindfulness, awareness, contemplation, and compassion. The idea being, think of it like a balanced meal, or to use the exercise analogy, a full body workout. Yeah. And as you deepen your practice, you can expand or contract any part of the practice based on what you need. So to give you a personal example, I had mentioned that I want to bring more love into my life. So the compassion part is where I spend the bulk of my time. So I still do the same sequence. So I keep that little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of awareness, a little bit of contemplation, but it's really focused on compassion.
And have you seen that shift?
Completely.
Like you focus more on one than the other?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like when there's something that I'm finding like my mind is scattered, just one of those days, I'll focus really on the mindfulness part where I can, really ground myself.
See, this is why I could see 2 years in, you're not bored of meditation, because it's not one thing to you. It's actually, there's a lot of ways that you're approaching it, which is...
Yeah, well, the bored thing is funny because my favorite definition of meditation is the Tibetan word gom, G-O-M, and it means to become familiar with. So if you think of meditation as a process or a practice that helps you become familiar with something, in this case, you're becoming familiar with yourself.
Yes.
So for me, I'm pretty interested in myself.
Yes.
I find myself fascinating. And so, they say people's favorite things is like their name or, right?
Well, yeah, because we have Dale Carnegie here, that was one of his mottos, right? That a person's name is the most beautiful sound to them.
Right. And so, if you think about it, like I'm learning about myself and I'm evolving as I go, I feel more, the more I practice, I feel more connected to people. I feel more connected to animals. I feel more connected to the universe. I learn more about myself in terms of what's actually important to me, in terms of how I want to spend my time, who I want to spend my time with, what are the priorities, what actually matters.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's far from boring. It's actually the opposite. It's completely intriguing. And the more time I get to spend practicing and with the people in the space, the more inspired I am.
I want to draw a parallel because in my facilitation work, I feel like in terms of group work, in very tense situations, what I ask people to do is to open, to allow many voices to come in, and then to just explore them, to not judge them, just move them around the wall and see what's there. And actually my second episode with my friend Abby Covert, who's an information architect, she does this exercise where there's no good or bad ideas. You just get all the ideas out and you move them around the wall and there's non-judgment. And it almost seems like it's like japa, like the active part of meditation where you generate some, at least in mantra meditation, some focus. But there's no judgment of when you go off the meditation. You don't judge what comes in if you have thoughts or sleep or there's no, it's about mindfulness. It's not about judgment. I've never sort of thought about my facilitation work as a kind of meditation on let's see what's going on in the group.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of parallels. Definitely, that's one of the things that we talk about when we give the basic instruction is not only just returning back to the breath when your mind wanders, which it naturally will, but also not judging yourself. We're very hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is not that time. This is the time to be gentle, to be compassionate with ourselves. And things will pop up. We'll think about, boy, I'd really love a roast beef sandwich. Like the most random thing you could think of.
Which is fine.
And maybe you don't want it, but maybe that's just a thought that emerged. And, you'll think about the future. You'll start worrying about something. You'll think about the past. You'll reminisce. It's all okay.
Yeah.
It's all fine. This is the time to just, whatever comes up, you notice and you let it go. Come back to the breath. So yeah, it sounds like the work you're doing has a lot of meditative elements to it.
It's interesting. I never really thought about that parallel. I feel like we've talked about the inner conversation, right? And both designing it and also not designing it, right? When it sounds like you do leave some time to wander and to think. You certainly did that between your first business and this business, like really leaving some open space, which I think is just absolutely super awesome. I feel like the conversation we haven't talked about is like the community, like how Journey is cultivating community, because you have a community of instructors. You also have a community of meditators. You have a community of companies that you work with. What does community design look like for Journey?
For us, it's been very organic. It's not something that we've said, you know what, community is important to us and here's what we should do. Here's our community strategy.
Yeah.
For us, it's been much more organic. And by that, I mean, we teach in individual organizations and each one of those has a unique culture. And within those, there are certain people that really gravitate towards the meditation class. And that's beautiful. And it becomes a space where people can really share openly. And that's fantastic. When we think of our community of teachers, as you mentioned, we do certain things to help bring people together. We're now teaching in 10 cities throughout the US. We even have a teacher that just moved to Bali who's doing some of our virtual classes for our Asia clients. So all of our classes are live. Some are in office and some are virtual. But in order to have all these teachers feel connected and feel like they're a part of something, we do a couple things. We have a Facebook group. We have a weekly call. So the idea is get people together where they can share what they're experiencing, ask questions, feel supported, and just have fun.
Yeah.
So we do that on the teacher side. And then, as I mentioned, we have those public classes now. The idea is because we have started teaching in corporations, there's a lot of people that we talk to who don't work in corporations or whose companies aren't supportive of meditation.
Yeah.
And so it's something where we say, oh, if you can't come to that, come to this class. It's free. Come sit with us. Bring a friend, bring your roommate, bring your partner. So we try to create I think I mentioned this before, supportive, inclusive community. Somewhere where anyone is welcome, come just as you are, and you're going to feel supported. We're going to help you on your journey, no pun intended, no matter where you are. It's hard.
I know. It's one of those words.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I think it's a great word you chose. So we haven't talked about the vision board at all. Is there anything on this that I love that your vision is everyone in the world meditating by 2030, and that your core purpose is all the way at the top, which is to bring happiness and peace of mind to every person on earth. That's a pretty bold set of purposes and visions.
Well, the idea behind putting this on paper, or in this case, putting it on a big board, is so that we're all clear on what we're working towards. You know, we're running a business, right? So there's certain realities in order for this to be sustainable that need to be met. But what's the higher purpose? Like, why do I wake up every day inspired and excited to do this work? Because I hope to create the conditions so that in whatever that is, 13 years from now, everyone in the world can actually meditate. And will everyone in the world meditate? Most likely not. But is it something where if we're able to get even close to that, what does the world look like? What does it feel like? How do we interact with each other? You know, I think the world is a very, very different place if everyone is meditating or sitting quietly for 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day. And the idea behind the core purpose being focused around every person on earth is the idea of teaching in corporations is great. Corporations could use this stuff. They really appreciate it. But there's people that don't work in corporations, or there's people that work in corporations that can't afford this, or there's people in, underserved neighborhoods.
Yeah.
The idea for us is really, as I mentioned, inclusive.
Yeah.
So we want to try to reach everyone.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So we're coming up against time. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you think is important for us to address about meditation, the design of meditation, how Journey is working in the world, or just your own practice, your leadership, anything at all?
We'd probably need a second session for that.
We can definitely, I would love to do that. I would absolutely love to do that.
We didn't talk about hip hop.
We didn't talk about hip hop. And it's funny, this is what I was thinking is that, like, if you're meditating all the time, you must need to listen to some loud music occasionally.
So I have a funny story on that, actually. So I took my brother and I took our mother to see Aladdin on Broadway. I guess it was like 6 months ago or so. And so after Aladdin, I was like, these Disney songs are really catchy.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to a channel called Disney Hits on Spotify. And all my team members who come over and hear me listening to it make fun of me, and I'm totally fine with that. It's like those are some beautiful songs. Anyway, the other day I'm sitting working and I get an email from my old assistant at my old company, a guy who I deeply love, saying, "Phil Collins, huh?" And I had been listening to a Phil Collins track. And he said, I was like, "Oh my God, can you see everything I'm listening to?" And he said, "Yeah, you're broadcasting it out." So here's me blasting Disney music all the time.
Yes.
And apparently broadcasting this to everyone. So
I love it. Hey, you know what? Let your freak flag fly. You said you bring your whole self. And sometimes you want to listen to some Britney Spears. There's nothing wrong with that. So do you remember what your first hip hop album was that you either bought or listened to or track?
I'd have to probably think more about the first one. It was probably something like totally cheesy, like Poison or Belle Biv DeVoe. I don't even think that counts as hip hop, but it's like in that genre.
That was hip hop smoothed out on the R&B tip.
Yeah,
so yes, I accept that.
I mean, for me, Biggie Smalls was and is my favorite artist, full stop, any type, no matter what.
So top 5 MCs in no particular order, definitely Biggie Smalls. Who else?
I love TuPac. I mean, coming
TuPac.
up,
Yeah, sure.
growing up in Queens in the 90s, we listened to a lot of West Coast stuff, and then obviously it was what it was.
Yes.
I think Eminem's early stuff, like I think he was just a great lyricist.
He changed the game. I mean, his use of rhythmic structure is totally different. I agree. Still have 2 more.
Yeah. I don't think he's top 5, but just as a separate note, I'm really feeling Chance the Rapper right now.
Okay. Yes.
I think he's doing some great stuff, but back to top 5, I'm going to say Jay-Z because again, 90s New York rapper and the longevity. And then, who's my 5th? I love Rakim.
I'm so glad that if you didn't put the God MC on there, I'd be like, wait a minute. Okay, yeah. I remember listening to Paid in Full with my brother on a cassette in his room, and I was like thinking of a master plan.
Yeah, so a true lyricist. I mean, I think that, if you put those 5 guys in a room, that would be pretty special. Yeah,
that's pretty good. I think KRS-One, especially because of the way he criticizes Queens, obviously. And I have to say, I saw Big Daddy Kane at Celebrate Brooklyn a couple of years ago, and it was really special. I feel like Big Daddy Kane, always has
like
been
me now.
Yeah, exactly, like a classic, and perfect. And as I said before we were taping, I remember listening to Eazy-E, and I obviously they're not some of the greatest rappers in the world, but God damn it, like their music was just Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
Like that movie, like it was just like a homecoming for me. It was a beautiful thing.
That's great.
Well, I'm glad we got some hip hop.
Yeah, fit that in there.
Please don't drop the mics when we're done with the recording. But thank you very much for your time. This is really, really awesome.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Likewise. Thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
All right. And we're going to leave it right there. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Thanks for your fine attention, and I'll see you next time.